Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's General Community Call. I'm your host for the day, Ed Marcus, leading the developer relations team at Hashgraph. And today we have very exciting topics. The first one is going to be a recap of HederaCon 2026. That's the Hedera annual conference that this year ran from May 4th in Miami at the Faena Forum. But more than a recap, we're going to walk through what HederaCon set in motion, what the announcements actually mean, and what the room felt like. What was the energy like at that event from the people who were there? Now, before I get into the HederaCon recap, I do have some housekeeping items that I want to share with you. The first one is this is being live streamed to multiple channels. So feel free to share it with your networks so that everybody knows what's happening in the Hedera ecosystem. Also, this session is being recorded. So if at any time you want to go back and catch up on things or rewatch or re-listen to any segment, you're welcome to do that at your own convenience. And I also want to point you to an amazing bounty that started this week. So it's going to be an AI agent bounty with challenges for developers and opportunities to win prizes for solving specific fun problems that you can work on. And last but not least, I also want to thank the folks behind the scenes, Luis and Fermin, for the organization and bringing these calls month to month to our ecosystem. So thank you, guys. And now, before we go into the HederaCon recap, I also want to share with you a teaser on a very interesting topic, and that's the TSS ceremony. So I'm going to share the screen here. And what's exciting about this is that Hedera just completed its first multi-party cryptographic ceremony. We know that as TSS, and that was covered by HIP 1398. You should be seeing a link somewhere in the screen pointing you to that HIP if you want to read more about what that ceremony entailed. Now, over about 4 weeks from mid-April to mid-May, a few members from the Hedera Council and a group of ecosystem projects, each of them contributed fresh secret randomness to build the public parameters for the zero knowledge proof system that is going to be the foundation for the Hedera's threshold signature scheme. And so this is really significant because it's a one-time setup that upgrades the network forever. It's going to be that trust foundation that enables us to have constant size block signing, also state proofs, block stream, block nodes, and all the other exciting things that are coming throughout the rest of the year. Now, here's a very simple way to think about it. So as we all know, zero knowledge proofs are pretty awesome, but they depend on a big bundle of public numbers that everyone agrees to use. Now, the catch is that if any single party knows the secret randomness that was used to build those numbers, then that single party could actually forge fake proofs. We don't want that. So the key is that we never let one single party build, that alone. Instead, what we do is we run it as a ceremony. And in that setup, every participant takes a turn. They mix their own, fresh secret, and then they hand it off to the next person. And then the key is that everyone verifiably destroys their secret. So as long as you have one participant out of that group that is honest and actually destroys that secret, then the whole thing is secure, right? One person is enough, and that is the magic of this protocol. And so with the fantastic group of Hedera Council members and community projects, that bar was met with comfort. So what did that unlock for the Hedera network? Well, it's effectively the foundation for the cool things that are coming next, right? I mentioned Blockstream, block nodes. It's a key enabler for constant size block signatures. So now the signature for every Hedera block is 1.2 kilobytes, no matter how big the network gets. Also, this enables having state proofs that any smart contract or any EVM can verify. And you also have a 32-byte cryptographic ledger ID, which is going to be the key for the state proofs and the cross-network verification. So the cool thing, too, is that Hedera is now part of a small set of networks. You remember Zcash and a few others that have completed this type of ceremony. And TSS ceremonies have become the gold standard for serious zero-knowledge proof deployments, right? And so that was great to see on the Hedera ecosystem with council member participation as well as community project participation. Now, as I mentioned, this is just a teaser. The deep technical walkthrough is going to come next week at the May Technical Community Call. And next week, we're going to have engineers who design and run the ceremony. They're going to walk through the protocol, the cryptography, the outputs, and what's coming next. So this is a must-watch session that you have to join us for. So that was the quick teaser. Now I do want to transition to the main topic of the day, which is going to be the HederaCon recap. And for that, we have 5 guests today. Each one is going to bring a different angle to the conversation. So the first person is Allison Morris from our events team. She's going to help us set the scene here. We also have Tamsin Hill from marketing, and she'll walk us through the programming, how the day was structured, and all of that. From the community, we have Brett Williamson from Hashgraph, and he's going to give us that ecosystem partner perspective. Also have in the call Cash Balotra, and he's going to share what came out of HederaCon from the partnership and the BD lens. And we also have Phil. Hello, my friend. He's joining us from Hashpack, and he's going to bring also that community angle, including Hashpack's appearance in the Open by Design panel. So I want to kick things off with some introductions. So Allison, Tamsin, Brett, Cash, Phil, welcome. If you could give us maybe 20 to 30 seconds to introduce yourselves and what you do in that order. Happy to hear from you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ed. Hi, everyone. My name is Allison. I am the Events and Growth Marketing Manager at Hashgraph, and my job is essentially to create fun, engaging, and meaningful events for the Hedera ecosystem. And yeah, really excited to be invited back again this time to talk about HederaCon, and thanks for having me.
Hi there, I am Tamsin Hill. Thanks, Ed, for having me. This is my first time, very exciting. I'm a content marketing manager at Hashgraph, so that involves all things communications, social media, evergreen content, basically communicating all of the great stuff we're doing here at Hedera and Hashgraph.
Thanks, Ed. Appreciate you having me. And thanks to the whole Hashgraph team for hosting a top-notch event at HederaCon. My name is Brett Williamson. I lead business development operations for Hashgraph. We are a data provider, integration partner, and consulting firm in the Hedera ecosystem and beyond. And yeah, thrilled to be here. I appreciate it.
Hey, guys. My name is Cash. I'm part of the institutional digital assets focus out here within the business development and the solutioning team at Hashgraph. Our focus is to basically build products and help our clients solution, solutions to their problems that they have in the FSI space.
Hi, my name is Phil. I'm marketing lead over at Hashpack, the #1 non-custodial solution on Hedera. Really happy to be here. I've been with the team since more than a year now, and the company has been running for 5 years. Connecting people, companies, projects, entities, great folks like on this call. Really happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Amazing. Thank you all for the introductions and for joining us today. Top tier panel, no doubt. And for those of you who are joining us for the first time, really glad to have you here on this call. So Allison, I want to start with you, setting the stage about the event. If you could walk us through HederaCon 2026 in terms of the venue, the format, the audience, maybe the stage setup. How did that shape out to, happen that day?
Sure. So HederaCon this year, as you mentioned, it was hosted at the Faena Forum in South Beach, Miami. And we've pretty much had our eyes set on this venue since the get-go, because if you've been to the venue, it's just gorgeous. How we set the venue was people would check in and get their swag outside in front of the building. And then there is a branded staircase movement going up to the 2nd floor. And then you're met with this big amphitheater area where we turned it into a food and networking lounge. If you've noticed, CoinDesk Live also did their interviews on this floor. And then if you go up to the 3rd floor, and that's where we had the 2 stages, where we had the main stage and then also the trust layer stage. So the main stage was where all the bigger industry conversations were happening. That was also where we announced Clipper. And the trust layer stage was happening in parallel with more of a tailored discussions. Also, in terms of audience, more than half of the attendees were enterprise and executive level. And this was actually intentional because we wanted to create an event where people aren't just passing by. They're not just looking for swag or quick networking. And we want people to engage with our content and also network with the high quality people that we were able to attract to the event.
That's awesome. Certainly, the audience mix is something that I was able to witness as well, and huge engagement, huge quality in terms of the conversations that were happening there. Now, this was the second annual HederaCon that we've done in a while. I know we had done some a long time in the past, but we also had one in 2025 in Denver, and now Miami this year. So what was your take on the audience mix this time around? How did it feel different? And also, how was the scene in Miami compared to Denver last year, especially because in Miami we had F1 and Consensus alongside HederaCon?
Mm-hmm. So if you do remember last year, we brought it back for the first time since 2018 in Denver. And that was because for years and years, people were saying, like, you need to bring back a dedicated HederaCon ecosystem event. So we did. And everyone saw how successful and how valuable HederaCon 2025 was. So this year we decided, we need to bring it back again. We're going to make it an annual thing. And we chose to co-locate HederaCon with Formula One Week and Consensus in Miami. And the week just felt like the whole industry really matured. The audience mix, as I mentioned, was more enterprise and institutional compared to even last year. If you look at the caliber of speakers and the organizations we had at HederaCon, ranging on topics like payments, tokenization, digital assets, and policy, and also the fact that most of our governing council members also weren't present. Just to see all these companies come together was also, it just felt way more polished compared to last year. At the same time, also our builder and community presence was extremely strong. Lots of HBarbarians came out to support the event. I saw they were hosting meetups, dinners, and getaway trips. So essentially the combination of all of that actually made the event feel extra special. It didn't feel fragmented at all, but different parts of the ecosystem coming together, actively engaging with each other in one place. So that was really good to see this year.
I love that theme that you're hinting at, which was huge convergence, right? From the F1 race to Consensus happening with the whole industry there. Also the council members being present, the builder ecosystem. So absolutely big +1 to your points there. Tamsin, I want to bring you in and hear your take on the programming side. How was that thought process and those decisions to define the themes and the anchors for that day?
So I think Alison said it perfectly about how we really felt we were shifting towards enterprise adoption. We had way sort of bigger, mature adults in the room. So from the beginning, we wanted HederaCon to reflect that and feel sort of less like a crypto conference and more like a global enterprise conversation about digital finance, real world adoption that's already happening today. So from a programming perspective, HederaCon then was kind of really built around 3 ideas that made that come to life, which was trust, connectivity probably, and real world utility. So then we kind of started asking a simple question: who are the voices in the industry that people generally want to hear and learn from? And then from there, we shaped the agenda around the core themes of the event that I'm sure everyone saw, which was tokenization, payments, interop, sustainable finance, regulation, and also digital asset policy was a big one. And then as the event programming evolved, it then became more and more shaped by the people in the room. We were really, really lucky that we had such a high caliber of participants that wanted to talk at HederaCon. So then the focus just naturally shifted towards creating right conversations between the right people rather than forcing people into panels or what we think other people should be hearing. So then ultimately, we then tried to make sure that every session also came back to that central question of how are we building trusted rails that operate at a global scale, and the proof points and the people that can really talk about it.
Amazing. And I love those points. And speaking of people in the room, Brett, I know that Hgraph does a lot in the Hedera ecosystem. Many of the points that Tamsin mentioned around connectivity, payments, and other use cases are enabled by mature and reliable infrastructure in the Hedera ecosystem as well. And so from that perspective of infrastructure providers, of partners, what would you say was the most useful thing that you took away from HederaCon?
Yeah, I think, I second, maybe third what Alison and Tasman have touched on at this point, but it was a clear signal of where Hedera as a network is headed. A lot of Hedera Council members and familiar faces from working groups were a part of, such as the U.S. Tokenized Money Market Fund working group, for example. The teams were in the room. The institutional side of the ecosystem really showed up, and I think that's give a lot of credit to the Hashgraph team for bringing all of those really executive level folks together. I mean, we see a lot of the same things, the same shift in our clients as well. Our team's onboarded, RWAXYZ Ledger on the data side, and Australian Payments Plus and Blacklake Investments on the consulting side. And ultimately, the signal from the conference really matched kind of what we've been seeing in our own pipeline, which for us is incredibly exciting. The one thing I will note that I have to say is it didn't feel overly corporate, and I don't want to take that for granted. It was certainly polished, but there was a lot of collaboration enabled there, right? So how do we work together might have been one of the most frequent questions that I heard at HederaCon, which to me is incredibly exciting. So you really don't get that kind of energy in a hyper-competitive or zero-sum ecosystem. So I was thrilled about that.
Absolutely. Such an excellent point. Now, Brett, I do want to get your take on Clipper, because we saw Mance Harmon, one of the co-founders of the Hedera network, positioning Clipper as important as Hashgraph, right? And so from Hashgraph's perspective, running infrastructure for builders and developers, does that framing match what you're actually seeing and hearing from developers and what they care about?
Yeah, honestly, I think Clipper has the opportunity to be as important to Hedera as Hashgraph. Right now, at its current stage, I mean, it's still in closed beta, so I want to be precise about the word opportunity. I think there is still a lot to prove, but I do think it could be another foundational layer in the ecosystem. What gives the framing weight, in my opinion, is the direction the industry is going. The future is clearly cross-chain. I don't think you'll hear anyone argue that at this point. And almost anything of value will be probably tokenized on a long enough time horizon. Clipper is positioned at the intersection of those two trends, which is a strong place to be sitting. So I feel really good about kind of where it is. I mean, at Hgraph, we're watching it closely because we have a number of clients and prospective client conversations around cross-chain bridging as we speak. The demand for it is real. Builders are asking how to move value between networks, whether it's to enhance customer choice or distribution. There's a lot of good work being done across the industry on the problem, and Clipper is one of the approaches we're following closely just because of all these conversations that we're having. So I mean, ultimately, I think it's strongly positioned and feel really good about where we stand.
Absolutely. Tamsin, I want to go back to you and get your take on some of the announcements, and we'll get to more of the announcements with Cash as well. But Tamsin, that opening keynote that had that theme of invisible ubiquity by Mance and Eric Piscini, that was where Clipper was announced, and then a few other things. Can you walk us through that moment? Like, how was it built up, and what was the room's reaction from what you saw?
So I think hopefully a lot of people would agree that keynote was one of the highlights of the day. I think what made the invisible ubiquity keynote so powerful was that, unlike other keynotes, it wasn't just sort of visionary storytelling. It was backed by the real proof that came out later on in the announcements. So Mance actually used that phrase invisible ubiquity during a CNBC interview at Davos earlier on this year, and immediately just resonated because it perfectly captured where the industry is headed, like blockchain becoming invisible rails operating quietly beneath everything else. So from then on, we just knew it was going to be the keynote central theme. And then from a sort of PR content marketing perspective, it was really exciting that what made that vision actually land was that we were no longer speaking hypothetically. So the launch of Clipper alongside the ioBuilders investment announcement and also HashSphere general availability, it really made that vision that Mance spoke about previously, and also Eric spoken about it a lot in a lot of his interviews too. The vision was actually tangible. So yeah, as I mentioned, I think a lot of people were just expecting a traditional keynote, but then the moment Clipper was announced, you could really just feel a sort of shift of energy in the room, and people just immediately understood the significance of it and really wanted to learn more. And then just the programming was so great. We followed straight into Lehman's fireside chat, which explained how Clipper came together, and then followed into Richard's demo, which just showed it working in practice. So I think that whole progression together really made the moment even more impactful. And then it was so obvious the buzz just continued throughout the day, and people wanted to learn more and people were talking about it. got a lot of good PR from it as well. The media really wanted to know more. And yeah, I think it couldn't have gone any better. It was a great moment.
That's absolutely spot on. And I do want to hear the perspective from partnerships and the BD lens. So Cash, with those announcements around Clipper, HashSpheres, and the strategic investment in partnership with ioBuilders, can you walk us through what each one of those announcements actually means in practice? And how was that helpful, and how were the conversations with the people that were in the room?
Sure. So the way I frame it is that these are three different distinct market signals that compound each other. So HashSphere going GA was one of the biggest thing for us. It immediately changed the conversations in the room. Before that announcement, every client dialogue would be, when can we actually use this? We've been, trialing with this. We've done a lot of work, so we want to get this in production. And there's always this qualifier hanging on it that this is beta. So GA now removes that objection. We are now talking about production timelines, commercial terms, and onboarding a lot of these clients onto HashSphere. For anyone that we have been active dialogue with, it's whether that's around tokenized assets, post-trade settlement, treasury, we have now flipped the conversation from evaluation to procurement. The second part is the ioBuilders investment. We've been working with them very closely for a lot of the years. And that's why, when a lot of people heard about this investment, they were surprised in a better way, I would say. Their flagship product, Aceto, already exists. It's already out there. And HashSphere integrating into this starting June means we are not asking clients to wait for a pipeline. We have already got that pipeline in place. And from a BD standpoint, that's a faster path to revenue. The distribution model also matters here. Hashgraph team selling and servicing Aceto gives us a bundled story that's harder for a lot of the competitors to replicate very quickly. Clipper is the longest fuse of the three, but the one that excites me the most. It's in closed beta right now with an early adopter program coming up. So it's not a product conversation yet. It's a positioning conversation. But it's arguably the most strategically important messaging that we walked out with. Every enterprise we talk to has multi-chain or multi-network problem brewing out there. Their assets are on different systems. They want connectivity without the security risk of bridges. Clipper lets them claim that future without being locked into a specific architecture. The conversations that I'm having right now are keep me informed, which tells me that this pipeline will materialize very quickly once the early adopter cohort has something to show. Needle is moving fast really right now. And I'm really excited with all these three announcements that we have made.
Absolutely. That's an excellent take, Cash. Speaking of announcements, there was another indirect announcement, which was that Accenture joined the council the week prior to HederaCon. And that was featured throughout the theme that day. Now, from your perspective, what does that signal to the market and maybe to enterprises that may be evaluating Web3 technologies or even the Hedera ecosystem?
That's a great question. Accenture joining a week before was a very exciting news. We've been working with them on a lot of engagements beforehand. We've got work around Nav AI and Equity Labs that's already in place. And having them now as part of the Hedera Council means now they're running a consensus node, holding council voting rights. This isn't just a commercial partnership that we're talking about here. It's a governance skin in the game. The signal to the enterprise prospects is twofold. First, the credibility signal, where Accenture now sits on the council alongside a lot of our other council partners, IBM, Dell, Google out there. So whenever there's a CTO or a COO at a bank that asks who else is committed to this, the answer includes their own transformation advisors. The trust proxy is very hard to manufacture. So this is a big leg up for us when we have these conversations now with the institutions. The second is the strategic signal. The Accenture's strategic rationale is agentic AI. They're building Hedera-based solutions already for financial services, government, large enterprises. And that specific framing coming from their senior managing director was that the network enables compliant, auditable transactions in regulated environments. That's not a quote from a vendor. That's from a firm that advises a big chunk of Fortune 500 companies on their enterprise technology decisions. For a prospect who's cautious about DLT adoption, hearing their trusted advisor is building on the same infrastructure is a meaningful unlock that we have got out there. The on-the-fence enterprise typically has 3 blockers: governance concerns, integration risk, and will this exist in 3, 5 years or whatever. Accenture joining the council addresses all these 3 very simultaneously.
Excellent. I do want to dig deeper and also get your perspective on spheres. I know we've talked about Clipper, ioBuilders. You touched on spheres now, Accenture as well. But with spheres, there comes this set of principles, right, around privacy, around delivery versus payment, PVP, and also direct value transfer, and even interoperability with the Hedera public network via Clipper. Now, from the BD perspective, from your view, which one of those principles are moving the needle in enterprise conversations today?
I'll try my best on this. I think all those 5 principles are really key. But just to recap, the 5 principles that Eric outlined in the keynote were ZK-proof transaction privacy for DVP, PVP, and direct transfer. So DVP is delivery versus payment, PVP is payment versus payment, and direct transfer. You've got standalone architecture without the public network dependencies, which is the case for a lot of other setups. Customer control validator and governance models that we have, and then mathematically guaranteed finality and fair transaction ordering and interoperability with other spheres. So this is a meaningful unlock for a lot of the participants that are out there. From my perspective, my honest stack ranking would be that transaction privacy via ZK proofs is the first priority that we have out there. It's a conversation eye opener. Every institutional client that we talk to, whether it's banks, asset managers, custodians, depositories, they have the same non-negotiable out there. They will not put settlement flows on infrastructure where counterparties can read their positions. It's a big no from a regulatory standpoint. ZK proofs DVP for PVP, DVP, and specifically the language that compliance and risk teams understand is a non-negotiable in this setup. And I think that's what this fulfills. It is that core principle that gets you past the first legal and privacy review right before you even get into the more technical deep dives with these clients. The second one that I would come down to is the customer control validator and governance. This removes the biggest objection that in regulated markets where clients would come up, some of the central banks would come up and ask us, who controls the network? If a regulator asks a bank, who governs the infrastructure that your settlement runs on? The answer in HashSphere case is, we do. That's a fundamentally different conversation than delegating that control over to a third party. This principle directly addresses a lot of the governance requirements that came out of Basel, MiCA, and other regulations out there. Lastly, I would come down to the mathematical guaranteed finality. Post the Silicon Valley Bank and FTX, settlement finality is a broad level topic. The ability to say that the transactions are final, not probabilistic, not waiting for any confirmations, there's no rollback risk, is a direct response to what regulators and risk committees want to hear. The standalone architecture, Clipper interoperability are still important, but that's a longer term architecture story that we're building on. And clients need the trust as the floor before they start thinking about the ceiling.
Excellent. Thank you for that perspective, Cash. Now, speaking about the long-term and future opportunities, I do want to switch gears and have Phil's take on the opportunities for Hashpack and the wallet ecosystem, because Hashpack contributed to this Open by Design panel alongside the Linux Foundation, Decentralized Trust, also alongside Hashgraph. And so looking at all the announcements and other things, conversations and opportunities that HederaCon delivered, what gets you and the Hashpack team excited about future opportunities, things that you could build for the broader ecosystem and for wallets?
There's so much, and that's a great question. I just want to go into a personal angle before. If I put my Hashpack hat on the side, just strictly from a user side of things, I feel like if I'm going to what happened over HederaCon really pushed the envelope in terms of vibes and the perspective. It really felt like the feeling for that really was, and still is to this day, like we are at the right spot at the right time. And again, from a user perspective, it's a good time to be on Hedera. Where our brand and company is really the good spot, I feel. So of course, this reflects over Hashpack in the way that the capabilities that we have, like ecosystem-wise and product-wise at the moment, is like we cannot get that anywhere else. It's so unique, and that's a major differentiator. I feel like also with this event and all those announcements, what this brought is this connective tissue between grassroots communities, like Allison was saying. Also, there was no layers to that. It's like all homogeneous between communities, this connective tissue with companies, enterprise use cases, and Hashback is 1000% here for that. So yeah, again, rotating back to the announcement and the event, is that really what this felt like, and to this day still, it's like this felt like a gathering. It still feels like a destination, like not just for the event, of course, but for the ecosystem, and for us, of course, at Hashback too, because position also is a huge part of that. And I feel like, again, Hashback and Hedera is generally becoming this user layer where all this activity becomes like more usable and through shared worlds and experiences. And since the event was such a great success, in my opinion, again, we sit closer to the user, to the builder, and even at the enterprise level, which really even gives us access, because the friction really becomes even less, because that's where demand is forming, and we see that unfolding. And I used to chef before in my legacy career, 23 years. This is my gray hair. And again, I've orchestrated a couple events like those. I got to give like a quick shout out again to Amplified Events and Allison, because Alicia also, because the event was really properly done. It was really, really good. It really felt also that this connective tissue again was really close by. And that's being felt like throughout the entire ecosystem, I feel, because we're still talking about it, like through DMs, back channelings, shows like this, through companies and projects like Lemdiplex or Orbit for trading, Bunzo for lending, HGraph for data, or Starly threading to data, Santex for collectibles, or McLaren DApp, because there's a Montreal Grand Prix coming up this weekend, or Dovu for audit trails. There's so many great opportunities right now. Announcement and the event that happened 2 weeks back is a clear reflection to that, because I feel like, again, it's a tad cliche, but hiding the wires is getting more and more potent and more even evident, like abstracting the tech as hard as possible. And what speaks up at the moment is the products, because it's all connected. And I feel like if we rotate back a bit to agentic stuff, the X402 of this world, agentic payments, conversation happening around agents and how they transact, verify, and coordinate at scale. One of the speakers also that moved me, and again, a great announcement and great talks, of course, Rob Adam had magnificent talks on there with payments and blockchain infrastructure. And of course, I'm biased, but may, of course, support greatly about all of this, because we will need identity, data, authenticity, also trust baked directly in the foundation. And that's where, again, I need to give flowers to Hashgraph Online for all the work that they've been crushing so far. And yeah, again, clear destination that the ecosystem where it is sitting at the moment really feels like the wisdom and the mindshare of folks developing cool use cases is really arriving at a point where, wow, we got this. And we are absolutely here. And Clipper is a great example also what I saw, and we can correlate back also what we're bringing also with Hashback with cross-chain swaps. Like say with our partner with X Exchange, the integration removes chain complexity. It's all about the experience user want. Like if you want just to dabble into other ecosystems just available for you. So that really resonated with me, because our cross-chain swap is the same mindset of things where you're really abstracting the chains. It's really all about, it's seamless app to app. It's non-custodial. It's just like you just want to be transferring assets and just have fun. A great example, if you go over the XRPL ledger and you're noticing, I don't know, the dead pixels, they're crushing numbers, and you're literally 3 clicks away now from just enjoying those beautiful experiences, and you're not leaving the ecosystem, you're not leaving the Hashback experience. That's really potent to me. Or our latest multi-language support also is a clear signal as to abstracting all the noise, abstracting all the change, and just focusing on the product. We launched multi-language support, it was 6 weeks back, and now folks speaking English, Spanish, Chinese, Japanese, Indonesian, Hindu, Urdu, Japanese, Korean, French, Dutch, Italian, Polish, can all have fun with the product. So yeah, the beautiful event, beautiful announcement also that really, we spoke on 15 about the invisible ubiquity, and I feel that's where we're at right now. And we feel greatly the same way in terms of vision. for Hashpack at the moment, and we're still very much riding onto those vibes, and for sure, and that'll be for the entirety of the year, I believe.
That's a very rich take, Phil, and I love that you touched on so many different angles beyond just the HederaCon day, right? Like you touched on things happening outside of the event and all throughout the ecosystem, whether it's McLaren, whether it's Saucer Swap, whether it's the wallet capabilities you guys are introducing and the opportunities you're exploring. And also, of course, you touched on everything that happened at the event itself. And so I'm curious to get your take, as well as Brett's, on this next question, which is, as builders and infrastructure providers that have been in the ecosystem for a long time, if you were speaking to someone building on Hedera today, what would you say is the first thing that they should be looking at with, you know, everything happening in the ecosystem today, and maybe even the new announcements that happened over the past 2 weeks?
I talked a lot, Brett, if you want to hop in first.
Oh, I'm happy to hop in, Phil. No, I appreciate all your comments as well. I mean, I think for builders, maybe at the retail level, it really depends on what you're building. But if you've been shipping public dApps on Hedera day to day, I say nothing necessarily changes. Keep building. As Cash touched on, what actually changed is who can credibly and confidently evaluate Hedera. For example, again, as Cash mentioned, if you're an SMB or institution and privacy has been a blocker, your customers or your customers' customers, you now have a viable option, right? Clippers on the horizon, and more broadly with the Hedera Council additions, FedEx in February, McLaren Racing in March, and Accenture in April. I mean, it just continues to, the roster continues to add credibility to the network. So overall, I mean, I guess it depends on which seat you sit in, but ultimately there's an opportunity to build here, whether you're in the retail side or the institutional side.
Yeah, so true. I would say, awesome points. I would say there's never been a better time to be crushing and crafting absolutely anything inside the ecosystem, because again, there's no distance. Every layer feels like it's homogeneous. It really makes sense for you to be crushing anything. I would say start small. Absolutely start small with something that really and genuinely resonates with you. Even if it's a use case that's for your community and there's only like 12 people. Even if you have just a dozen people that really resonates with your product, that really resonate to what you're building, craft your own brand, gather feedback, digest the feedback, and then make it actionable, make it organic, and let it grow to then 20 people and then 100 people. Because it just makes sense right now to be crafting anything on there, because again, there's the dev Q&A happening in Discord, I believe like twice on the same day for European folks and North American folks. And case in point for starting small, over at Hashback, we started in our Discord. We started all this in the Discord chat, the 4 co-founders, and it really makes sense because we tackled the vertical from which we really respected and heard the grassroots feedback continuously, and just continuously like iterated on the entire product. So yeah, I would say that.
Amazing, guys. I want to get a similar take from Allison and Tamsin from a marketing and community perspective. If you could choose one thing, one win that you would be able to put in front of a lot more people, because we do have that opportunity with these community calls, out of everything that happened during HederaCon, what would that one thing be that you want everyone to know? And I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and that's probably a tough question, but just would love to get your take on it.
Sure, I can go first. So yeah, Phil and Brett, they talked a lot on the community side of things. So I think I'll just mostly touch on the marketing side of things. And I think from a marketing perspective, the level of credibility and visibility that Hedera as a whole brand, how HederaCon created, was really amazing. I think people can sometimes become desensitized to all those social posts or announcements online they see on Twitter, on YouTube, Google, etc. But when they, from an events, person perspective, when they actually show up to HederaCon, an event, they get to experience what the ecosystem feels like, as opposed to just seeing it online. And this year, HederaCon felt very ambitious, very collaborative, as we've mentioned, and just very forward-looking with all the things that we have announced. And I think that perception shift is one of the biggest long-term wins for our marketing. And as someone that just hit my 4 years working for Hedera, it's just really great to see how much we've matured over the last 4 years that I've been here. And honestly, I also want to highlight, because I have seen all the operational side of things on the back end, so this is my second win, because I feel like this doesn't get talked about enough. When people look back at May 4th, they see the polished photos, the videos, announcements, stage, speakers, etc., and everything just looks seamless. But behind all that were months and months and months of planning and execution from an incredible team. I mean, huge shout out to our incredible marketing team, our core planning team. Shout out to my manager, Lauren Cohen. She's our head of growth and events. She's currently on a well-deserved PTO. She's not able to be here and speak, but she was really the driving force behind the scenes, making sure that everything is moving. And of course, our CMO, Sarah Hale, who oversaw the broader vision across the event. So just another big win is there were just so many moving parts, all the speakers, AV production, sponsors, live stream, staging, hospitality, programming. But to hear that people genuinely had a great experience at HederaCon, personally, that is very, very fulfilling for me. And of course, the team too.
That's amazing. And I do love that, because you're referencing like the top of the iceberg that people see, but then there's the bottom of the iceberg, which was a huge collaborative effort to have that successful result. And that was pretty awesome to see. So I know I'm seeing a few comments from the community on like, oh, I want to be there next year. So we certainly hope that's the case, that folks that missed it this year can join us there. Tamsin, what about you?
I think I was going to touch on just one specific point that Alison mentioned, because she managed to put everything so beautifully and articulately there. That's just the collaborative point. I think we've released all of the live sessions online. You've seen all of the session recaps. It's a shame that the people that are watching these sessions, whilst they're great, they don't get quite to experience that feeling of real connection and people actually coming away from HederaCon being like, I met this person, and they're going to, work on a new project together, feeling well and truly integrated as a whole community. I think you can't explain that or post that or market that. You had to be there to actually have that feeling in the room. And then moving even further into that collaborative point, I just need to once again reinforce what Alison spoke about. I think being on the marketing team and working on HederaCon for months in advance, seeing it come together and seeing all of these different parts within marketing and beyond within the Hedera ecosystem and Hashgraph, seeing it all to come together and get the feedback we did was just something that I am still in awe of. I'm in awe of Alison and Lauren specifically, who just kind of spearheaded the whole thing. I don't know how they do it. They were running around like headless chickens most of the time, but just made themselves seem so professional and you wouldn't have known it. But it was great. And I think it really showed what, the ecosystem can do when we really pull together. So, yeah.
That's a great take. I will say, the content from the day is available today on YouTube. You can go watch those recordings. But I do want to echo Tamsin's point that the energy at the event, and even the day after, having the opportunity to connect with people who are part of the ecosystem, potential or prospects that are there considering building, or even folks like the ambassador and the scholar program. It was fantastic to have that opportunity. And, I'm referencing here a launch that we had with Phil and a few other builders that are active in the ecosystem. So that you can put a price on those type of experiences. Now, I do want to transition to get Phil's, Brett's, and Cash takes and perspectives on this. What is something that you're still thinking about 2 weeks after the event that hasn't left your head? Is there one thing that is still in the back of your mind that you thought it was so cool that you would like to share with the audience here? Cash, let's start with your take.
I think for me, the biggest take was that the whole speaker roster was just amazing. A lot of times people look at the events and they say, oh, a lot of senior people speaking out there. But like the team behind this is not just seniority. It is the specificity of these roles that were out there. We're not just talking about getting just the logos on the stage out there. Every person that was on the stage was actually coming from the actual business itself. These are not just people showing up from an innovation lab and organizations that are saying, oh, you know what, let us do a proof of concept and see how this goes. These are people who own actual P&L business units in these organizations. they are actively looking at this from a perspective where these are not just exploratory conversations, but they are actual infrastructure investment decisions that they have to make and say, hey, you know what, we need to invest in this as the next generation of platforms that we want to put in place. So those things were really key for me. And I think the session framing reflected that. So you had panels that were explicitly talking about stable coins, tokenized cash, agentic payments, AI, and how this will reshape a lot of the core financial rails that are out there. And this is not being talked about in the sense that, yes, they, whether this will, but this is about, yes, this will. And there's a meaningful signal that's coming out of this where people are saying, oh yeah, this is a reality right now. This is not just something that we're talking about like 5 years down the line. And I think we have proven this with, having HashSphere underpinning the Reserve Bank of Australia's Project Acacia, whose report just came out this week. The work that we have been doing with ioBuilders on the Accenture tokenization platform. And when you combine all this work that we have done with the institutions and the people who were there in that room, this is not a proof of concept roadshow anymore. This is actual discussions that are happening and where we're talking about actual production work moving on to the DLT side of things. And some of it is already running out there. So I'm really excited with all these conversations that happen out there.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing those takes, Cash. Brett, what about you? In 30 seconds to a minute, can you give us that one thing that is still in your mind 2 weeks after the event?
Yeah, I'll be quick. Cash covered a lot of it, but I'd say, it's really, I'll go back to the people who showed up, right? You had executives, engineers, lawyers, BD teams, digital asset teams, compliance folks, capital allocators, all in one place. And generally speaking, I found the best conferences, or the conferences that yield the best results from a business perspective, are able to bring all of those folks together in one room, and HederaCon did that. So kudos to you for being able to pull that off.
That's an amazing take, and kudos to that team. Absolutely. Phil?
Meeting people face-to-face for me is the forever cheat code that puts the tech even in a more magical spot afterwards, because case in point, we have this call, we all seen each other, or very close to, or if I haven't seen you face-to-face yet, we're definitely looking forward to it. Changes everything, puts the tech even more on fire, I feel, and the connections is like closer. And that's my candy. And to have an event where this proximity can really be propelled to a way that afterwards everything changes and is stronger, the entire ecosystem genuinely benefits from it. Kudos.
Absolutely. All right, folks. So we're getting close to the end of our call. I did mention this is being live streamed. We're live here. Anything could happen. So I do want to open the floor for Q&A from the audience, right? So you can share your comments, share your questions, and then we'll spend a few minutes with our speakers here addressing those. Now, to give you some time to think about your questions, think about everything that you have heard, I'll give you a few seconds. And in those few seconds, I do want to share some call to actions that you can take after watching this call. The first one is you can express interest in the Clipper Early Adopter Program. So here in the screen shortly, you're going to see a banner with more information and the link that you can follow if you're interested in learning more about Clipper and joining that early adopter cohort. At the same time, you can join or read the Hashgraph blog post with all these announcements. That's also a link that we're going to make available to you in just a few moments here. So you can go back, watch the recordings, or again, if you prefer to read or put it through an AI and give you the summary, you can always have that blog post available to you. And so we'll point you to that in just a few moments. Now, the primary call to action for the day, I would say, is this QR code here. If you want to build with AI, with the AI agent kit that Hedera provides, this is a great opportunity to build something fun, exciting, and win some prizes for solving some difficult, compelling, and challenging problems. And last but not least, I do want to remind you that we have that technical community call covering the TSS ceremony in depth with engineers next week. So make sure you stay tuned for announcements and the link to join that session. So hopefully that was a few moments there to help you think about your questions. Now let's see what's coming from the audience here. Okay, so I have a first question from Cash. Hey, Cash, if my company wants to actually try HashSphere or get connected with Hashgraph BD, what's the easiest first step?
Go on to the Hashgraph contact us page and send us a message. We look at all the messages that we get from there, and we will connect you with the right people.
Excellent. There you have it, hashgraph.com. There you're going to find all the details about the announcements that were made, the products and opportunities, and the forms to express interest. Tamsin, we have another question from the community for you. If I missed HederaCon, what's the one talk I should go watch first?
There are so many great ones, but I do think it has to come back to the one that we've been talking about this whole time, and that's the invisible ubiquity one. Just to hear what's next. You can learn all about Clipper, HashSphere GA, ioBuilders, what's coming next, and then it leads perfectly into Lehman's Fireside and Richard's demo. So I would put those three together, but start with invisible ubiquity.
Amazing. All right, so here's a question for Ed. So they're asking me, I'm not a developer. What is a TSS ceremony in plain English? ELI 5, please. So imagine you're going to introduce a bunch of new amazing features. The TSS ceremony is the generation of fresh randomness and security to be able to support those other improvements that are coming. And so it's a group of folks that come together, create that randomness, then they verifiably destroy it so that signatures that will happen for Hedera blocks going forward will always be the same size. Like everything is secure from that TSS ceremony. That was probably like ELI 12, but close enough. Again, stay tuned for the deep dive next week. All right, next question here. Will the next HederaCon be more than one day, or was one more than enough to get the content done and interact with ecosystem builders? I suspect that's for Allison and Tamsin.
TBD on that. I mean, HederaCon was 2 weeks ago, so we're still trying to wrap up on everything, consolidate all the learnings. But once we start planning for content, which we'll start probably very soon, and also deciding on the date and where that will be, we'll be hopefully be able to share a teaser on that in the, I don't have a timeline, but soon, hopefully, just to get people excited for it. But I do know that whatever we decide to do next will be better than the previous one. I think the bar is just going to be higher and higher every year. So just, stay tuned for that.
Absolutely. All right. Next question is, what about Clipper is the average Hedera user overlooking? Is it that the bridging is easier? Is it cross-chain is easier and it opens up more pools of liquidity? Cash, I think you're very well equipped to give us your take on this.
I think if you've looked at the news in the past few weeks, you will realize that none of it is easy. For me, when I look at Clipper, in all my discussions with the people within our organization and also outside, like I think this is like the second biggest piece that we're thinking about since the Hashgraph consensus algorithm that we look at. It's super hard to build these kind of things that actually do cryptographic verifications to move assets from one chain to another, which have different setups. But I think it's also the quality of our team that makes it look so easy that people think, oh, you know what, this is something very simple. I wish I had that better answer on this. Maybe the more technical folks could explain it. But like I think in all the stuff that I've seen in detail, it's an extremely hard challenge that we're trying to solve. And I'm glad that you've taken this thing up, because it's a common question that everybody has been asking us, that how do I issue assets without locking my liquidity into one chain? So that's very critical if we have to get widespread digital asset adoption.
Excellent. That's a great take. One point that I want to expand on, Cash, is the compounding of all of these technologies, not just for Clipper, but also for Spheres, right? It's the fact that we're relying on very strong foundations that have been laid out years ago. For example, Spheres have that interoperability with the public ledger, but they also use the technology from the public ledger, powered by the same consensus algorithm. And then, when you think about the interoperability of these different ledgers, whether it's public to private or private to private, also leveraging the ABFT nature of the Hedera consensus algorithm, or the Hashgraph consensus algorithm. So I think there's something really powerful. And like Cash said, very valuable, but hard problems to solve. But at least the technology tools that we have look very promising. All right. So maybe time for one more question here. I see this possibly as feedback here for Tamsin and Allison and the team, but could we add a scavenger hunt across HederaCon as Dev Day and a consensus-style matchmaking platform for execs and attendees next year?
That is a possibility, but I really appreciate people already getting excited for 2027. That means we did a good job and people are looking forward to the next. But yeah, like I mentioned, it's going to be better than the previous one. Thank you for that feedback, and we'll definitely take that into consideration.
Amazing, and absolutely awesome to see that excitement already providing improvement opportunities and thinking about the event next year. All right, friends, I really want to thank you all for joining us today, also joining us at HederaCon and sharing your perspectives. Your time and your thoughts are super valuable here for the ecosystem. So I think this was a fantastic session, and I wish you all a great rest of the week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Ed.